I have been enamored with this topic for a really long time, and I've never been able to do it justice, but we'll try again here. And this is really about surfacing the things we know nothing about or understanding in a large problem, the scope of that problem. And you have these non-trivial spaces where individuals don't understand the scope of it, or there are areas of the scope of this thing that you're working on that have either never been worked on before by anybody in the group, or maybe there's dynamics involved that you don't know what they're going to be. And so you are trying to solve a problem or build something and you don't really understand the scope of that thing, and it falls into a couple areas. And, I heard this, oh man, over a decade ago, a politician or like a technocrat really had given this speech about known knowns, known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. And, I kind of wondered what happened to the fourth quadrant. But, it turns out this is actually a political and other industries problem-solving skill. I even saw an example on Wikipedia about the known unknowns related to chemistry, right? We can actually run chemical analysis against something we don't know what it is, but if we run the analysis against it, we can determine what it is. So it's something anyway, I think it's really interesting. So we have, I'm going to call it this, and then we'll really get into this, right? We have the known knowns, the known unknowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns. And for a long time, I thought there were only three of these. The known knowns. This is the thing in a project that we're working on, where we understand the scope of it. We know the things that we need to know, and we know what we need to know, and we know the values of the things we need to know. And then there's the known unknowns, and that's like, we're doing something new. We've seen something similar to it before. There's some variations. So what we've done before are the known knowns, and what we haven't done before, we have some idea what those things are we need to do based on previous experience, and so that's a known unknown. We know that we need to know these things, but we currently don't know the answers to those questions. And then the other one that a lot of people talk about is really the unknown unknowns. That's the stuff that crushes a project, crushes some effort, and it's because you didn't understand the scope of it. You didn't know what you didn't know, and so you made bad decisions and you paid for it, right? And then there's the unknown knowns, and that one's kind of weird. That's kind of things that you might deny to yourself, or things you know that you didn't really know that you knew. And sometimes there are things that you wish you didn't know. So the big ones are the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. And that tends to be the ones people focus on. Let's just talk about it a little bit, right? So the problem space we have when we go to build something is full of issues and determinations we need to make and metrics and everything else. My experience is in technical systems. And one of the reasons a lot of these fail is because we don't understand the scope of what we're working on, right? So we think we understand the problem space. I mean, it's also true that we redesign it continually, and we change the scope, so that's a problem. What were we intending to do here? But there are a million little tick boxes inside some program or some action you're trying to take if it's big enough. And if you look at that, there are parts of that we know the size and scope of, right? I know I've got to go deploy this thing. I know we've got to go build this. We know we're going to have to bring water for everybody. We're doing a humanitarian aid, and we know that we need water, we need food, we need electricity, and we need medicine. Oh, but we don't know what the landing zone is going to look like. We don't know what help we're going to get on the ground. We don't know how bad the conditions are going to be, right? So we know the size and scope for parts of it, of what we need to do, and we can be very disciplined and organized around that. And then there are other parts that we know there's something there, but we don't know what it is, what it's going to look like, right? So the humanitarian aid one I called out before is an example. We don't know what it's going to look like on the ground. Will we have dry space for us to set this up? Will we have problem with gangs raiding the supply chain? Those kinds of things. Actually, because we don't know how much of that's going to happen, but it's a known problem. We know that there are going to be theft, or we know we're going to have complications with local governments, right? But we don't know what they're going to look like, but we can plan for those. We can start to dig those out as we get into this. So we have the things that we knew the size and scope of, and we have the things that we know exist somehow, but we're not sure what it really means. And then there's just stuff that we're blind to, right? We didn't realize when we're doing this humanitarian aid that there's actually a groundwater contamination problem different than we ever knew about before. I don't know. I made that one up. Or we need a different kind of filtration system and we didn't understand it, right? So that's really the problem space. This problem space is made up of a variety of conditions, a variety of constraints, some of which we know the size and scope of, some of which we know exist, but we're not sure of the size and scope, and some we didn't have any idea existed, either because we were blinded by some kind of myopic behavior, we didn't want to know it, we hid from it, or we just didn't have any experience with it. So in the known knowns, that's kind of what we were talking about. I hate that scrolling thing. Known knowns, right? This is the things that I know are going to be in, the constraints exist, and we know something about them, and our confidence in those might vary, and that's why these green checkboxes are slightly different opacity, and that's because I really understand some of these, and some of these I think I understand well enough that we can be confident about it, and we know we'll dig it out later. That's sort of the agile thing, right? And then the next one are the known unknowns. I know that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with the local politicians if we're doing relief, right? I know we're going to have to look into any religious problems that we have between the people that come to aid and the people that are already there, right? Any kind of conflict like that. I don't know. I'm making stuff up, and I apologize if I got that one wrong. But the idea is we know these things are required, right? We're going to have to work with them, but we have no idea what the politics or what the safety of the item on the ground is there. So in software projects, it'll be, we know we need to integrate with this third party, but we really have no idea what that's going to look like. We don't know how often it's going to happen. A bunch of things about it we don't know, right? And so that's the known unknowns. And that is a scope problem. It's a high risk compared to the others, but at least we have some idea maybe how many things we're looking at, and we'll have some confidence when we've covered it, right? The next one is the unknown unknowns, and that is just, man, we didn't realize when we got there that the transportation system doesn't work at all, that there's actually no road to that there's been a washout that destroyed every avenue in there. There's not enough, we didn't realize we couldn't get enough fuel there for rescue helicopters, whatever it might be, right? It's the unknown unknowns. And now, the one I used where we're doing humanitarian aid, we've done so many of those, there's probably not a lot of unknown unknowns, but there could be culture, topology, something else in software. It just might be, like I said, oh, we didn't realize we have this entire set of use cases for regulatory items that we needed to get straightened out because none of us have experience in that regulated space, right? And then the unknown knowns, that's sometimes stuff that we know the answer to a question, but we didn't know it. Or it could be a problem that we have that we didn't pay attention to because people are hiding information. Actually, information hiding would be another good one of unknown knowns, right? We didn't know there was anything going on in this space, but some subset of people did, and they didn't tell anybody about it. So we were blindsided by that. The last one, also, I think, so you have the quadrants we talked about, and then we have that the things you know that you don't actually know, and that's where you think you understand the scope and complexity of something. You have some estimate of what needs to happen, and this is a gating factor maybe for other things, and then it just turns out you're wrong, right? You know, we arranged for vehicles and drivers, and then it turned out they were in a different group of people, and they're not allowed past the border, right? And so we're going to need to find an entire new crew. So that's really what I wanted to talk about was this decisioning process. I gave a non-software example, but we have this in software all the time. It's part of the reason projects fail. And the question is, what do we know? What didn't we know we needed to know? Right? And what did we know that we needed to know, but we don't know yet? Man, anyway, you get the idea, right? The point is, when you're doing a large effort, you kind of need to go through the risk matrix. And if there's nothing in a couple of those boxes, you might have a bigger problem than you think, or you might be an expert at the problem. Who knows?